In the midst of current affairs and the outrage surrounding police brutality, the question of defunding the police has been brought to the forefront. There is a need for police reform and a shift in police culture, especially with the unnecessary deaths and excessive use of force used against George Floyd in Minneapolis and Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. Perhaps the defunding the police movement is a community's way of demanding that police no longer use excessive force and that police misconduct is eliminated. However, if you're looking to see improvement within an entity, you do not reduce the funding. When it comes to reallocating funding from police departments towards non-police public services, the police funding should remain within the police district and be utilized in a way that promotes community policing and positive public relations. Large police departments should mandate an increase in available funds towards changing the current militarized culture of law enforcement, increasing education and sensitivity training, and increasing the number of diverse officers with the community's best interests in mind will greatly decrease the amount of crime, violence, and subsequent police misconduct. Keeping and refocusing money within the police department is paramount in creating positive culture change. Changing the culture of law enforcement is key to creating a police force that is geared towards public relations and cultural sensitivity. An article from Business Insider written by T. Nolan states that a militarized response is in part due to a policing culture in which the protesters are often perceived as the enemy, and that police may suffer a reputational damage when they deploy militarized units. Quote from the National Academy of Science written by Jay Mamula. If America has a police force that seems unable to constrain its violence, and a population that has seen the videotape of Rodney King and the LAPD, has learned to fear its police forces. Quote from the book On Killing, written by retired Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. The problem is we treat a police academy kind of like we treat a military boot camp. We should treat it more like a classroom setting where we're allowed to ask questions and use critical thinking skills. Some academies have already moved from a warrior approach to a more guardian approach, which emphasizes fairly resolving disputes and winning public trust. An article from the Hetchinger Report written by C. Preston. Reallocating funding may inhibit police departments' growth towards increasing trust and cultural sensitivity. In a video from CNBC, it stated that it's largely agreed that police need more and better training. But part of the problem is more money needs to be spent on building that educational infrastructure. In an article from New York Times written by Jay Ellington, residents complain of rampant police mistreatment, but also out-of-control crime and violence. That reality has left many black residents here unenthusiastic about what has become known as the defund movement. Adding complexity to the debate, they say that they despise the police but need someone to call when things go awry. This lack of training funding, coupled with subpar training, can actually create a law enforcement agency that is more of a liability than an asset. An article from The Hill written by D. Mahalik. Removing funds from large police departments does not equate to less police violence. The sources of distress are due to the nature of the job, including both operational, whether it's patrol activities or crime prevention, or organizational tasks to include bureaucratic procedures. An excerpt from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health written by Emma Quardia. There is also an extensive body of research about the amount of force used and the characteristics of the police, the residents, and the incidents that take place within the community. In Hillsdale, a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri, new officers earn $13.50 an hour. That's after their probationary period. That's less than an hourly worker at Target. Low wages force many officers to take extra jobs, leaving them tired and unprepared to deal with a high-stress police situation. David Harris, J.D., University of Pittsburgh law professor, stated, "We should not assume that the most poorly paid cops are the worst cops, but the chances increase that you don't attract the best officers." That is an excerpt from Tech, written by Kay Goddess. Current police budgets are needed in order to increase police staff and resources to enact community policing to its fullest extent. Communities are in need of more police officers who are trained and equipped to conduct public safety within a changing society. In an article from The Conversation written by L. Buford, community policing and problem-oriented policing require problem-solving and creative thinking. And with a quote from Joe Biden, every single police department should have the money they need to institute real reforms like adopting a national use of force standard, buying body cameras, and recruiting more diverse police officers. More police officers, in particular, doesn't need to mean more arrests and more incarceration. More B-cops walking the streets seems to deter crime and reduce the need to arrest anyone. And some of the best validated approaches to reducing excessive use of force by police officers require departments to adopt more manpower-intensive practices. An article from the Vox written by M. Iglesias. An increase of highly educated officers will increase standards and accountability. Research shows that overall college-educated officers generate fewer citizen complaints. They are also terminated less frequently for misconduct and less likely to use force. An article from The Conversation written by L. Buford. In an article from the New York Times, a quote by Joe Biden is prevalent. Most cops are good, but the fact is the bad ones need to be identified and prosecuted. The studies indicate education has the following benefits on officers' abilities and performances: better behavior and performance characteristics, improved adaptability, and fewer on-the-job injuries and assaults. An article from In Public Safety written by M. Bond. Increasing mental health and well-being resources make sure our officers have the support they need in order to best serve the public. This special population often presents with higher rates of depression, substance abuse, and suicide than does the general public when speaking upon police officers. An article from Counseling Today, written by Jay Redman. The high rates of physical and mental health conditions among law enforcement officers reflects the need for medical and behavioral support and treatment, which does need to be funded. All of these systems do serve a valuable role in identifying problems, providing healthy feedback, and even dealing with some emergencies. Most importantly, however, they can serve as a conduit to a good, licensed therapist for further evaluation and resolution of serious issues confronting an officer due to the nature of the job. Funding community policing to its fullest extent will allow police to assist citizens to finding the resources they require. Police departments are already involved in many facets of community services and relations. Community policing is defined as a police strategy that utilizes local partnerships and greater decision-making authority among street-level officers in an effort to solve community problems. An article from the Charles Koch Institute written by S. Mosteller. An article from the Credentialing Resources Center Digest. Hospital and law enforcement often have to work hand in glove. Many trauma centers and emergency departments have a police officer stationed on site in response to injuries. Law enforcement is also responsible for bringing in individuals seeking behavioral, health/mental assistance, and working relationship with law enforcement is key to the safety, efficiency, and well-being of everyone in the hospital, providers, and patients. Collaboration between law enforcement and social workers during police interventions will reduce the number of avoidable casualties as well as build or increase police community trust. An article from the Contingent Social Scientists written by S. Lanman. Police departments are most readily available to the community. There is an average of 2.2 law enforcement officers for every 1,000 individuals living within the United States. And the size of the police department varies largely by location and population. An article from the Charles Koch Institute written by S. Mosteller. Police departments work with community partners in assisting people with a wide array of problems and social conditions, such as aiding sick people, resolving minor domestic disputes, regulating traffic, and educate children and teens about drug use. In many cases, the time police spend on the job have little to do with actual crime. Community policing is a negotiation of contracts between community partners and police departments. Some examples of community policing include using problem-solving techniques and strategies and partnering with citizens and other agencies in order to create activities that deter crime. From the Contingent Social Scientists, written by S. Lemon. In conclusion, policing in America needs to change. There needs to be a change of culture, higher standards of education and training, and more officers focus on affecting the community in the most positive way possible. All of these factors that need to change do not simply happen by themselves. It will take time and money. Money should stay within the police department to go towards these crucial changes that will positively influence the landscape of America. You cannot expect positive change if funding is reduced or eliminated.